If people are constantly praising you for being easygoing, flexible, or low maintenance, I have some bad news for you. On the surface, it's a massive compliment. It means you're calm, mature, and reasonable. But there's a version of being low maintenance that isn't about inner peace at all. It's just survival training. Because 90% of the time, when we say, I don't really need much, what we actually mean is, I figured out a long time ago that having needs makes me a problem. And that's where the whole low maintenance thing gets a little weird. At some point, an innocent personality trait becomes a receipt. It's a paper trail telling the exact story of what you were allowed to ask for, what you learned to stop expecting, and what you decided was safer to just want quietly. Sometimes that's about class, sometimes it's gender, and sometimes it's just capitalism doing jazz hands in a cute outfit. It's about who gets to have basic needs without getting punished for them, and who gets a gold star for pretending they don't have any at all. Think about it. Low maintenance is a phrase we normally use for cars, houseplants, haircuts, and appliances. Or maybe a cat if it's emotionally independent and hasn't chosen violence that morning. So when you call a human being low maintenance, you're already describing them like an object that requires low upkeep, something that's easy to own, keep around, and manage. The real shift happens when we turn low maintenance into a moral category. We start believing that a person is fundamentally better just because they require less. We see this all the time with women. The low maintenance woman is always put on a pedestal. She doesn't want expensive dates. She doesn't demand emotional reassurance. She doesn't ask for help. She just doesn't want too much. But so much of what we praise as low maintenance is literally just self minimization with a better PR team. It's the person who always defers on where their group eats because they're terrified of being the reason a plan changes. It's the person who tells everyone, oh, don't worry about my birthday, then feels incredibly stupid for feeling hurt when people actually take them literally. It's the person who claims they aren't a gift person because historically gifts in their life have been inconsistent, disappointing, or attached to a massive mountain of unspoken guilt. You say, I'm good, when you're very much not good because you've learned that care is emotionally, socially, and relationally expensive. So you become efficient. You pre reject your own desires before anyone else can do it for you. You scan the room to figure out what would be the least inconvenient version of yourself, and then people look at you and call you mature for it. One of the most underrated parts of growing up working class is learning exactly what your wanting does to a room. Kids don't just notice whether their family has money, they learn the emotional weather around money. In some houses, asking for something completely changes the temperature. You ask for anything beyond bare minimum survival, even a snack at the store or a new pair of shoes for school, and the whole room gets tense. You're left with this silent, heavy message. Why would you even ask for that? And if wanting things always creates tension, then not wanting things becomes a survival skill. You stop asking, you stop pointing at things in stores. You learn to say, it's okay, I don't even need it, before anyone else even has a chance to tell you no. Sometimes what looks like a simple minimalist lifestyle is just disappointment that got organized into a personality. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a real beauty in being able to enjoy small things: a gas station drink, a quiet room, a drive with the windows down. But there's a massive gulf between actual gratitude and emotional budgeting. Class dictates that entire boundary. The wealthy are allowed to call their desires standards. Middle class people call them goals, but poor people are taught to call them too much. One person wants organic food, a gym membership, therapy, and actual time to rest, and it's labeled wellness. Another person wants those exact same things and they're told to live within their means. Having basic human needs is only considered inspirational when you can afford to brand them. Having taste requires options, exposure, and enough safety to choose something just because you like it, not because it's the cheapest or safest choice available. A lot of low maintenance people never had the breathing room to become particular about anything because preference is a muscle you have to practice using. If your entire life trained you to choose whatever created the absolute least friction, your taste might not even fully belong to you yet. You can see this play out perfectly with the restaurant menu test. Some people look at a menu and just choose what they want to eat. Other people look at a menu and calculate who they're allowed to be in that moment. They check the prices before they even look at the cravings. They scan for the cheapest item that doesn't look like they're ordering the cheapest item. They order water because a $5 drink feels wildly unnecessary. They edit their hunger because hunger is a lot cheaper when it's edited. And the worst part is, this stays with you even when you aren't broke anymore. Class isn't just about the balance in your bank account right now. Class is what money taught your nervous system to do when you were vulnerable. You can have money in the bank and still physically tense up when someone says, order whatever you want. Your brain immediately runs this anxious mathematical equation. Do they actually mean it? Are they going to judge me? Am I being greedy? Will I owe them for this later? The person who doesn't need much is almost always doing math that nobody else in the room can see. For women, the rewards of being low maintenance are deeply tied to being desirable. The whole cool girl archetype exists because she's managed to be attractive without requiring any actual upkeep. She eats burgers but stays thin. She looks perfect but doesn't take long to get ready. She's incredibly understanding and never makes emotional demands. But a lot of what we call low maintenance femininity is actually incredibly high maintenance behind the scenes. Effortless style, natural beauty, and being emotionally chill require massive amounts of suppression, time, labor, and self soothing. The fantasy isn't actually a woman who requires zero labor. The fantasy is a woman who performs all that labor herself, completely in secret, and never invoices anyone for it. She's not low maintenance, she's self maintaining. And people love that because it lets them benefit from the final product without ever having to respect what it costs to make. Low maintenance offers this cheap fantasy of a relationship without consequences, closeness without obligation, and loyalty without investment. So when a so called high maintenance person makes their maintenance visible by asking for basic effort, clarity, or reciprocity, they get labeled as too much. But they aren't being too much, they're just interrupting the discount. The world loves easy people, easy friends, easy partners, easy employees, easy customers. And this is where low maintenance becomes completely political because every single system benefits from people who make themselves cheaper to care for. Workplaces absolutely love low maintenance workers. The ones who always say yes, who just absorb terrible management, and who cover extra shifts because it's totally fine. Corporate HR culture praises them as flexible, resilient, and adaptable. But let's be honest, half the time, going above and beyond just means the company successfully moved the boundary line without paying rent for it. Makes me think about hotel towels. You stay at a hotel, and there's always that little green sign in the bathroom asking you to reuse your towels to save the environment. Look, conserving water obviously matters, but it's incredibly funny how often massive institutions suddenly discover morality right at the exact intersection where your reduced expectations save them a bunch of money. Suddenly, not asking for fresh towels isn't just convenient for them, it's ethical. The same corporate logic trains regular people to experience reduced care as a personal virtue. Bringing your own grocery bags, tolerating severe understaffing at a restaurant, or accepting fewer and fewer services gets rebranded as sustainability, patience, and gratitude. It teaches us to moralize our own deprivation, to feel proud of requiring less and less from systems that are already giving us nothing. This whole making do with less thing gets completely rebranded depending on who's actually doing it. When a poor person wears secondhand clothes or keeps broken down furniture, it's just budgeting and economic necessity. When a rich person does it, it's a vintage minimalist aesthetic with character. That same act is treated as either stylish or sad because simplicity chosen from abundance is read as taste, while simplicity forced by limitation is read as lack. Scarcity is only allowed to be tasteful once it's entirely optional. For a lot of us, being low maintenance functions like social camouflage, especially when you're moving through spaces where you feel like you don't fully belong, like being the broke friend or the scholarship kid in a wealthy friend group. You learn to say, oh, I'm good with whatever, because admitting out loud that a $40 brunch will cause you to mentally rearrange your entire monthly budget feels way too exposed. You become easy as a form of dignity just to avoid pity. But being easy is incredibly expensive in its own way. Every single time you hide what something costs you, you pay for it twice, once with your money and once with your own self erasure. You learn to make your needs invisible, like we discussed earlier. But this social rule doesn't just apply to people at the bottom trying to blend in, it applies to how we view anyone who dares to take up space. And if you want to see exactly how defensive society gets when someone refuses to play that game, look at the anti diva industrial complex. There's something so culturally suspicious about how much we collectively hate divas. If you look closely, a diva is usually just a person who refuses to make their needs small and neat. The diva wants the lighting right, the sound right, the contract right, and the respect right. Society scoffs and asks, who do they think they are? But that's exactly the point. Who gets to think they are someone? There's a very clear reason powerful people are allowed to have preferences while powerless people are expected to just have gratitude. A pop star asks for a specific brand of water in their dressing room and they're labeled insane. Meanwhile, a tech billionaire demands an entire city's infrastructure bend around their corporate convenience and they're called a visionary. A boss has preferences, a worker has an attitude. A man knows what he wants, a woman is high maintenance. This is just hierarchy protecting itself through language. Calling someone high maintenance is a highly efficient way to make their needs sound completely excessive before anyone has to actually examine whether those needs are perfectly reasonable. Birthdays are another thing. They're this weird, quiet little emotional crime scene for this exact topic. They reveal everything about what people believe they're actually allowed to want from the world. Some people develop this hyperprotective anti birthday posture. You've heard it. Oh, I don't really care about my birthday, or please don't make a big deal, or seriously, I don't need anything. And sometimes they genuinely mean it. But a lot of times they do just mean, I've been disappointed enough times in my life that pretending not to care feels a lot safer. Because if you admit that you care and nothing happens, it hurts. But if you volunteer to be invisible from the start, at least you can pretend the lonely outcome matched your original request. That's the ultimate emotional logic of being low maintenance. It allows you to preemptively lower the stakes so you can never be let down. It's a way of actively collaborating with your own disappointment. You give everyone permission to do absolutely nothing, and then you feel ridiculous for that quiet, heavy mood drop when they actually follow your instructions. A lot of low maintenance adults were just highly convenient children. They were the kids who entertained themselves, who noticed when the adults in the house were stressed, and who subtly adjusted their own weight so they wouldn't add to the pressure. They got labeled as mature for their age, which is usually just adult speak for a kid who had to learn how to require less care than they actually deserved. But kids are supposed to be inconvenient sometimes. When a child turns their own volume down, it's not maturity, it's a warning light that the household doesn't have room for their full emotional reality. Then those kids grow up into adults who feel intensely guilty whenever someone tries to help them. They experience care not as comfort, but as something transactional, dangerous, and deeply suspicious. Modern life runs on this convenience economy that treats difficult human needs like bad product design. If you need time, reassurance, or accommodation, you're treated like an inefficient glitch in the system. But humans aren't optimized products. We're historical, wounded, complicated nervous systems. Being alive is maintenance. There is no version of personhood that requires zero upkeep. And once people build a relationship with the version of you who had no needs, they're going to deeply resent the version of you who starts telling the truth. If the care you receive disappears the second you become inconvenient, it was never care. It was just customer service with feelings. And look, the answer here isn't to overcorrect and start treating every daily interaction like a performative luxury brand partnership. The goal isn't to become incredibly expensive just to prove you have value or to turn every single human interaction into a test of loyalty. The goal is just honesty. Self abandonment is saying yes while your body is physically screaming no. It's being proud of how little you need while silently harboring this deep, bitter resentment that nobody's stepping up to offer you more anyway. The better path is what I call honest maintenance. It's just knowing what helps you feel anchored and cared for without pretending you need nothing. It's having the literal freedom to say, I actually do care where we eat tonight. Or, I know I said my birthday wasn't a big deal, but part of me really wants to be acknowledged. Or, that's completely outside my budget without treating it like a shameful confession. Or, I need help before you're already actively falling apart on the floor. Honest maintenance isn't about becoming harder to love, it's just about becoming harder to overlook. There is a profound, massive difference between being easy to love and being easy to neglect. Too many people have been praised for being easy when what they actually were was entirely undersupported. So the real question isn't whether you're low maintenance. The question is who benefits from you staying that way, and whether the version of you that needs less is actually freer or just a lot cheaper to keep around. If this essay resonated with you, let me know. Tell me where you fall on the maintenance spectrum. I'd love to talk about it.